auteur is. But don't worry, most people don't really understand. Here's the thing. Despite how they may act, most directors are not auteurs. Most of the time, it's really just marketing. And being an auteur has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of your work. So you can have directors that constantly put out good movies who aren't auteurs. And you also can have directors who put out movies that you don't like who are auteurs. However, even though most directors aren't auteurs, out of everybody that works on the film, the director has the greatest chances of being an auteur. But wait, let me explain auteur theory for those of you who don't know what it is. Auteur theory, originating in French film criticism of the 1950s, asserts that the director's influence on the film is so strong that they can be considered the auteur or the author of the film. This idea was first proposed by critics of the influential French film journal Cahiers du Cinéma. Pretty sure I f***ed up that name. Moving on. Notably Andre Bazin and Francois Truffaut. That being said, even before then, the director was considered the most important influence on the outcome of a film. In Germany, an early film theorist named Walter Julius Blum explained that since filmmaking is an art geared towards popular culture, a film's most immediate influence, the director, is viewed as the artist, whereas earlier contributors like the screenwriter would be considered an apprentice. The idea of the director's influence had always been there. James Agee, a leading film critic of the 1940s, said that the best films are personal ones made by forceful directors. Meanwhile, the French film critics Andre Bazin and Roger Lienhart described that directors vitalizing film depict their own worldviews and impressions in subject matter as by varying lighting techniques, camera work, staging, editing, and so on. Now, back to Cahiers du Cinéma. And if you can't tell, I do not speak French, so if I keep butchering this name, forgive me. Now, the French New Wave movement was closely associated with Cahiers du Cinéma, with a lot of their critics going on to be a part of that influential wave of filmmaking. The two most notable members of the French New Wave being Francois Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard. In 1954, Francois Truffaut wrote an essay where he criticized the then popular cinema of quality, in which directors merely adapted novels without their own unique touch to the subject matter. He argued that such directors were just posers, emphasizing the influence of a director's personality on the film. He introduced the term la politique de l'auteur. I don't know how to speak French, but it's here on the screen, meaning the policy of the authors. Truffaut cited directors like Jean Renoir, Robert Bresson, and Jean Cocteau as examples of true authors in cinema.
Et d'autre part, cette politique des auteurs avait un sens dans la critique française. Elle était, pour le cinéma français, elle disait au fond que n'importe quel film de Cocteau ou de Robert Bresson était plus intéressant, même si éventuellement le film n'était pas réussi, que n'importe quel film de Jean Delannoy ou de metteurs en scène qui travaillaient en adaptant des chefs-d'œuvre, mais de façon anonyme, disons.
Now, the term auteur theory and auteur theory in itself was brought to America by film critic Andrew Sarris. Inspired by the ideas that were circulating in the film journal, I'm not going to say the name again. I'm just not. Sarris introduced the theory to American audiences in 1962 with his essay, Notes on the Auteur Theory. Now, he went on to develop and refine the theory for an American context. Now, he came up with a three-part auteur theory, which is really what we still go by today. In this theory, he suggested that in order for a director to be considered an auteur, he must have three things. The director must be competent in technique, must have a distinguishable personality across all of their films, and each of their films must have some sort of interior meaning. Now, his book, The American Cinema, Directors and Directions, 1929 through 1968, published in 1968, applied these principles, ranking directors in their films. Now, Sarris's ideals and concepts and theories didn't just land on everybody without any pushback. All of this stuff sparked the so-called auteur wars against critics that disagreed with the theory, especially critics like Pauline Kael. But I'll get into that in a second. Wait, pause for a minute. Subscribe, because you haven't yet. Despite these debates, Sarris's theories greatly impacted the way that we watch films, criticize films, analyze films, and looked at directors to this day. Now, digging a little bit deeper into his auteur theory, one of the most important characteristics to be considered an auteur is consistent stylistic and thematic choices across a director's filmography. Strong directors have a certain way of telling a story that is instantly recognizable by an audience. For instance, look at these films. Just by looking at them, most of you know exactly who they were directed by, and most of you can tell that they were directed by the same person. That is a strong case for the auteur. But it's important to clear up the common misconception that every director is an auteur. Many directors are just guns for hire. Others don't have that much influence on the outcome of their film, and others don't have a consistent style across their films. An auteur is a force that shapes the film into their own image, and in actuality, this could be anybody from a screenwriter to a producer, but more often than not, it is the director, because the director has the most direct influence over each aspect of the filmmaking process. Now, like I said, there's a lot of criticism of the theory because filmmaking is such a collaborative art form, which brings me back to the auteur wars that I mentioned earlier, which were heated debates in the 1960s which questioned the validity and the applicability of the auteur theory on directors and movies alike. Now, obviously, Andrew Sayers was very strong with the way he felt about this theory, but on the opposing side, Pauline Kael was one of the critics that felt like the auteur theory was overly simplistic and reductive. She believed that it undervalued other crucial contributions to the film, such as writing, acting, and cinematography. Kael argued that the theory could lead to the overvaluation of certain directors based purely on stylistic quirks rather than substantive quality. And this debate wasn't just academic, it influenced film critics, moviegoers, and filmmakers alike. But here's the thing. Pauline Kael was right. She didn't argue against the director's influence on the film. She argued against directors who didn't have strong style and personal choices, writing on the coattails of others and claiming to be an auteur. Every director isn't an auteur. Like I said, most aren't, in fact, but every director has the ability to be an auteur more so than any other influence on the film. And that's because if you look at cinema as a work of art, which you should because it is, the person that has the most direct influence over that work of art is the director. And that's necessary. With dozens and sometimes hundreds of people working on a film, you need a singular vision to bring it all together. If not, then each department could be making a completely different film than the others. The art department could be seeing the film as a completely different movie than what the camera department sees, or what the hair and makeup department, or costumes, or lighting, and so on. The director is the unifying voice between all of these people and is the person that every other person working on the film follows. They have an idea of what the end result should be, and everything flows through their filter. Depending on the director, they'll control everything from the framing to the lensing to where the characters are within the frame.
For me, directing is camera work, and so I'm very on the front line of that. I've got to set up the shot, I've got to block the actors, choreograph the movement of the scene, bring the camera into the choreography, figure out when the camera stops, how it moves, how far it moves, what the composition is. So I've always got my eye on the lens, and that's what I do. I even pick the lens I want.
Actors' performances are guided by directors. Entire portions of scripts can be thrown away and rewritten by directors on the fly. Everything that you see and hear in a movie passes through the director's filter. The director can say yes or no and throw away anything that they don't like and keep everything that they do. A director could technically tell an actor that they want them to wear clown makeup and sing all of their dialogue. And if that's the director's vision of the film, then it's likely to happen. Now, of course, directors are collaborative and they're taking suggestions from everybody that's working on the film, but at the end of the day, it's their decision to make. The difference between a normal director and an auteur director is two things: the amount of control that they take over the outcome of the film and how much of themselves they put into the film. Some directors have a strong visual sense and are very dominant over the cinematography.
It's not collaborative with Marty. It's collaborative in terms of lighting. So I put together these ideas of shots and things for the film, and I've done that my whole career with all of them. With Marty, he got these notes, and Marty got on the phone, very polite. He goes, "Bob, I got your notes. I have not looked at them, nor will I ever look at them. When I finish writing the script and I'm happy with my script, I will give you a notes for every shot in the film." That was it. All right, I guess I'll be operating and lighting on this show. Some people want more help.
Because of this, you can see their fingerprints all over the cinematography, even when they're working with different cinematographers. An auteur has a strong connection to both the technical and the artistic, which often presents themselves in reoccurring themes. For instance, the family dynamics in Paul Thomas Anderson movies, or the suspense that Hitchcock was known for, or independent womanhood in a Greta Gerwig film. Look, like it or not, the director has the biggest influence over the outcome of the film. And in a collaborative art form like filmmaking, that makes them the closest thing to an author. But none of that work could be done without dozens and sometimes hundreds of people working in tangent to create a singular vision. It just so happens that that vision is more often than not the vision of the director.